Throughout history, there have been individuals who have committed unspeakable acts of cruelty, terror, and violence. These people have caused immeasurable harm to others and left a trail of destruction in their wake. From ruthless dictators to sadistic serial killers, the list of the most evil people of all time is a sobering reminder of the dark side of human nature. Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler, as the dictator of Nazi Germany and mastermind behind the Holocaust, caused the genocide of approximately 6 million Jews and millions of others. His actions and policies initiated World War II, resulting in the death and suffering of tens of millions of people. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union's leader, implemented policies that led to the suffering and death of millions. Ruling with an iron fist, he used purges, forced labor, and mass executions to maintain power and eliminate opposition. The Great Famine and widespread repression under his rule contributed to his heinous reputation. Vlad the Impaler. Vlad the Impaler, also known as Vlad Dracula, was a brutal ruler of Wallachia known for his sadistic torture methods, including impalement. His reign was characterized by extreme cruelty, and he is said to have killed tens of thousands of people. Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, the founder and leader of Al-Qaeda, orchestrated the September 11 attacks on the United States, which killed nearly 3,000 people. He was responsible for numerous other acts of terrorism and violence, aiming to spread fear and instability throughout the world. Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong, the founding father of the People's Republic of China, implemented policies that led to the suffering and death of millions. The Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution resulted in widespread famine, social unrest, and the persecution of countless innocent people. Pol Pot. Pol Pot, the leader of the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia, orchestrated a genocidal campaign that resulted in the death of approximately 2 million people, or 1/4 of the country's population. His radical policies led to forced labor, starvation, and mass executions. Heinrich Himmler. Heinrich Himmler, a leading member of the Nazi Party and chief architect of the Holocaust, oversaw the concentration and extermination camps where millions of Jews and others were systematically murdered. His actions and ideology make him one of the most sinister figures in history. Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan, the founder and first great Khan of the Mongol Empire, led a series of brutal military campaigns that resulted in the conquest of vast territories and the death of millions of people. His armies were known for their ruthless tactics, including the wholesale slaughter of entire cities. Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il, the former leader of North Korea, ruled with an iron fist and fostered a cult of personality around himself. His repressive regime was marked by economic mismanagement, leading to widespread famine, and numerous human rights abuses, including political imprisonment, torture, and repression. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein, the former president of Iraq, was notorious for his brutal rule, marked by the use of chemical weapons against the Kurds, the suppression of political dissent, and widespread human rights abuses. His invasion of Kuwait in 1990 led to the Gulf War and further regional instability. Ivan IV of Russia. Ivan IV of Russia, also known as Ivan the Terrible, was a ruthless and paranoid ruler. His reign saw the expansion of the Russian state but was also marked by cruelty, including the violent repression of political opponents, mass executions, and the devastating Livonian War. Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un, the current leader of North Korea, maintains an oppressive regime that commits widespread human rights abuses, including forced labor camps, public executions, and severe restrictions on personal freedom. His pursuit of nuclear weapons and aggressive rhetoric have heightened global tensions. Idi Amin. Idi Amin, the former dictator of Uganda, was responsible for the deaths of an estimated 300,000 people during his 8-year rule. His regime was characterized by human rights abuses, ethnic persecution, forced disappearances, and widespread corruption. Benito Mussolini. Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy, led his country into World War II on the side of Nazi Germany. His policies resulted in widespread suffering, economic decline, and thousands of deaths. He was also responsible for the invasion of Ethiopia and the persecution of Jews and other minorities. Joseph Mengele. Joseph Mengele, a Nazi physician and SS officer, conducted horrifying experiments on prisoners at the Auschwitz concentration camp during the Holocaust. His cruel and inhumane medical research resulted in the death and suffering of countless innocent people. Nero. Nero, a Roman emperor, is infamous for his tyrannical rule and cruelty. He is believed to have ordered the Great Fire of Rome and subsequently blamed the Christians, leading to their persecution. His reign was marked by extrajudicial killings, political repression, and widespread fear. Attila the Hun. Attila the Hun, a fearsome warrior and leader of the Hunnic Empire, led a series of violent campaigns across Europe, causing widespread destruction and suffering. His brutal tactics, including the sack of numerous cities, have made him an infamous figure in history. Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold II of Belgium, during his rule over the Congo Free State, was responsible for the exploitation, forced labor, and brutal treatment of the Congolese people. His policies led to the death of millions and the mutilation of countless others. Leopold's actions in Congo remain a dark chapter in colonial history. Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro, the former leader of Cuba, implemented strict authoritarian policies, including the suppression of political dissent, the persecution of religious and ethnic minorities, and widespread human rights abuses. His rule led to the suffering of the Cuban people, economic stagnation, and international isolation. Napoleon. Napoleon Bonaparte, a brilliant military leader and emperor of the French, is often criticized for his imperial ambitions and the costly wars he initiated across Europe. His aggressive expansionism led to the deaths of millions and widespread suffering. Peter Gerard Scully. Peter Gerard Scully, an Australian criminal, is known for his involvement in the production and distribution of child pornography and for his brutal acts of child abuse and murder. His heinous crimes have shocked the world and made him a universally despised figure. Charles Manson. Charles Manson, the leader of the Manson family cult, orchestrated a series of gruesome murders, including the killing of actress Sharon Tate and her unborn child. His manipulation of his followers and his role in these brutal crimes have made him an infamous figure in American history. Reinhard Heydrich. Reinhard Heydrich, a high-ranking Nazi official and key architect of the Holocaust, played a major role in the planning and implementation of the final solution. His ruthless policies and actions contributed to the systematic murder of millions of Jews and others during World War II. Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian noblewoman, is believed to have tortured and killed young girls in the late 16th and early 17th centuries. Her alleged atrocities, including claims of bathing in her victims' blood, have earned her the nickname, the Blood Countess, and a reputation as one of history's most notorious female serial killers. Kim Il-sung. Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea, established a repressive regime marked by widespread human rights abuses, including political imprisonment, torture, and repression. His policies led to economic hardship, famine, and the suffering of the North Korean people. Adam Lanza. Adam Lanza, the perpetrator of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, killed 20 children and 6 adults in one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. His senseless act of violence has left an indelible mark on the lives of the victims' families and the nation as a whole. Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution and founder of the Soviet Union, implemented policies that led to widespread suffering, including forced labor, political repression, and famine. His actions and ideology laid the groundwork for the totalitarian regime that would follow under Joseph Stalin. Albert Fish. Albert Fish, an American serial killer and cannibal, was responsible for the gruesome murders and mutilations of several children in the early 20th century. His heinous acts and his deranged letters to the victims' families have made him one of the most notorious criminals in U.S. history. Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi minister of propaganda, played a central role in disseminating hateful ideologies and promoting the Holocaust. His skillful manipulation of the media and his role in the persecution of Jews and other minorities have made him one of the most notorious figures in history. Hirohito. Hirohito, the Emperor of Japan during World War II, has been criticized for his role in the war and the atrocities committed by the Japanese military. His reign saw the invasion of China, the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the widespread mistreatment of prisoners of war and civilians. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of the Islamic State, ISIS, oversaw a brutal campaign of terrorism, violence, and human rights abuses. Under his command, ISIS carried out countless acts of terror and mass executions, causing immense suffering and destabilization in the Middle East. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States, is often criticized for his role in the forced removal of Native Americans from their ancestral lands, known as the Trail of Tears. This brutal policy led to the death and suffering of thousands of indigenous people. Adolf Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann, a key organizer of the Holocaust, was responsible for the logistics of deporting millions of Jews to concentration and extermination camps. His role in facilitating the mass murder of innocent people has made him one of the most reviled figures in history. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, an American serial killer, was responsible for the brutal murders, dismemberments, and cannibalization of 17 young men and boys. His horrifying acts have made him one of the most notorious and reviled criminals in modern history. Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz, the perpetrator of the 2018 Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, killed 17 people and injured 17 others in one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. His senseless act of violence has left a lasting impact on the lives of the victims' families and the nation. Tomás de Torquemada. Tomás de Torquemada, the first Grand Inquisitor of the Spanish Inquisition, played a central role in the persecution, torture, and execution of those accused of heresy and witchcraft. His brutal methods and zealous enforcement of religious orthodoxy have made him a symbol of religious intolerance and cruelty. Joseph Kony. Joseph Kony, the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, has orchestrated a brutal campaign of violence, including the abduction of children to serve as soldiers and sex slaves. His crimes against humanity have caused immense suffering and displacement in Central Africa. Salvador Ramos. Salvador Ronaldo Ramos was a heartless school shooter who took out his issues on innocent and defenseless kids who did absolutely nothing to him. He killed 19 children ranging from ages 9 to 11 and 2 teachers. He also shot his own grandmother. This psychopath is so sadistic he blasted sad music while shooting the kids and said, "You're all going to die." Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer, an unidentified serial murderer, terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The killer's cryptic messages to the media and the unsolved nature of the case have made them one of the most enigmatic and infamous criminals in American history. Jim Jones. Jim Jones, the founder of the People's Temple cult, orchestrated the mass suicide and murder of over 900 of his followers in Jonestown, Guyana, in 1978. His manipulative control over his followers and the scale of the tragedy have made him an infamous figure in modern history. Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer, is often criticized for his treatment of indigenous peoples in the Americas. His arrival marked the beginning of the colonization and exploitation of the New World, leading to the enslavement, forced labor, and death of millions of native inhabitants. Maximilien Robespierre. Maximilien Robespierre, a key figure of the French Revolution, played a central role in the Reign of Terror. His radical policies and zealous pursuit of political enemies led to widespread violence, mass executions, and the suffering of the French people. Ed Gein. Ed Gein, an American murderer and grave robber, was the inspiration for several fictional serial killers due to his grisly crimes, which included the creation of trophies and keepsakes from the bodies of his victims. His heinous acts have made him a notorious figure in true crime history. Al Capone. Al Capone, an American gangster, was notorious for his involvement in organized crime during the Prohibition era, including the illegal sale of alcohol, racketeering, and the infamous St. Valentine's Day Massacre. His violent tactics and criminal empire have made him a symbol of mobster culture. Eric Harris. Eric Harris, one of the perpetrators of the 1999 Columbine High School massacre, killed 13 people and injured 24 others in one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. His actions have left a lasting impact on the nation, sparking debates on gun control, bullying, and school safety. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper, an unidentified serial killer, terrorized the Whitechapel district of London in the late 19th century. His brutal murders and mutilation of female victims have made him one of the most infamous and enigmatic criminals in history. John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth, an American actor, assassinated President Abraham Lincoln in 1865. His actions, driven by his support for the Confederacy and opposition to the abolition of slavery, have made him one of the most notorious figures in American history. H. H. Holmes. H. H. Holmes, an American serial killer, is infamous for his Murder Castle, a hotel he designed with secret passages and torture chambers to facilitate the killing of his victims. His gruesome crimes and cunning methods have made him one of the most notorious criminals of the 19th century. Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell, the Lord Protector of England, has been criticized for his brutal campaign in Ireland, where he committed massacres and caused widespread suffering. His suppression of royalist uprisings and the establishment of a Puritan dictatorship have made him a controversial figure in British history. Nathan Bedford Forrest. Nathan Bedford Forrest, a Confederate general during the American Civil War, was also a prominent early leader of the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist organization. His involvement in the massacre of African American soldiers at Fort Pillow and his role in perpetuating racial hatred and violence have marred his legacy. Stephen Craig Paddock. Stephen Craig Paddock was an American mass murderer who perpetrated the 2017 Las Vegas shooting. Paddock opened fire into a crowd of approximately 22,000 concertgoers attending a country music festival on the Las Vegas Strip, killing 60 people, including himself, and injuring 867, 411 of whom were wounded by gunfire. Paddock committed suicide in his hotel room following the shooting. The incident is the deadliest mass shooting by a lone shooter in United States history. Caligula. Caligula, a Roman emperor, is known for his erratic behavior, cruelty, and alleged insanity during his reign. His tyrannical rule, which included the execution of political rivals and the persecution of religious minorities, has made him one of the most infamous figures in Roman history. Andrei Chikatilo. Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo was a Soviet serial killer, nicknamed the Butcher of Rostov, the Red Ripper, and the Rostov Ripper, who committed the sexual assault, murder, and mutilation of at least 52 women and children. Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot, a biblical figure, is infamous for betraying Jesus Christ to the Roman authorities, leading to his crucifixion. His actions and the subsequent consequences have made him a symbol of treachery and betrayal in Western culture. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, an American financier and convicted sex offender, was arrested for sex trafficking of minors and faced numerous allegations of sexually abusing underage girls. His crimes, connections to powerful individuals, and mysterious death have made him a notorious figure in recent history. Gary Glitter. Gary Glitter is a former glam rock singer and songwriter. He sold over 20 million records and regained media attention in 1999 when child pornography were found on his laptop and committed sex offenses with children. He was sentenced to 17 years in prison in 2015. Karl Marx. Karl Marx, a German philosopher and political theorist, is best known for his development of Marxism, which forms the foundation of modern communism. Critics argue that his ideas have led to the suffering of millions under oppressive communist regimes, while others admire his critique of capitalism. Amon Goeth. Amon Goeth, a Nazi SS officer and commandant of the Plaszow concentration camp, was notorious for his sadistic cruelty towards prisoners. He personally executed and tortured countless individuals, making him one of the most brutal figures associated with the Holocaust. Mark David Chapman. Mark David Chapman, an American criminal, assassinated John Lennon, a former member of the Beatles, in 1980. His senseless act of violence has made him a notorious figure and a symbol of the dark side of fame. James Earl Ray. James Earl Ray was an American criminal who assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, on April 4, 1968. Ray was convicted in 1969 after entering a guilty plea, thus foregoing a jury trial and the possibility of a death sentence, and was sentenced to 99 years of imprisonment. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.